Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Attendance Bias mini-series where we're previewing each venue on the Phish 2025 Summer Tour. I am your host, Brian Weinstein. By now, we've gotten the scoop on the SNHU Arena in Manchester, the Pete in Pittsburgh, the Moody Center in Austin, Folsom Field in Boulder, the Schottenstein Center in Columbus, the North Charleston Coliseum, and the Mann in Philadelphia. It's been quite a run so far. By now, we are nearing the end of this series, as our episode today focuses on Phish's three-night run at the United Center in Chicago, which they will play on July 18th, 19th, and 20th. Today, I am joined by my friend Brendan. He is a longtime resident of the Chicagoland area, and he has seen his share of Phish shows in and around the Windy City. More to the point, he has seen tons of sporting events at the United Center and attended 2 out of Phish's 3 inaugural shows at this massive arena in the fall of 2023. Since Phish has played only one previous run at the United Center, there isn't a lot to dig into there. But there is a ton to talk about when it comes to Phish's Chicago history, the background of the venue itself, and obviously recommendations for things to do around Chicago during this 3-day run. So let's join Brendan to talk all about it for this attendance bias preview of the United Center. Brendan, welcome to Attendance Bias. How are you?
Great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Very excited to talk to you today about the United Center in Chicago, where Phish will be playing 3 nights, July 18th, 19th, and 20th on the summer 2025 tour. Normally, I'd have you on this podcast to tell about a special Phish show that you've seen, and we could still do that at some point. But today is all about Chicago. It's all about Phish in Chicago, and specifically about the United Center.
Yes, excited to talk about it.
Cool. So before we get too deep into it or any venue specifics, let's get to know you a little bit, Brendan. What is your history in Chicago and your relationship to the city in general?
Well, I was born in Evanston, Illinois, which is just north, and my family moved away when I was very young. Most of my childhood, we'd come up in the summers to, maybe go to a museum, but a lot of sporting events, Wrigley Field and whatnot, and definitely grew up a sports fan of all of the Chicago teams, even the White Sox when I was little. The Bulls run was a huge piece of my love for the city of Chicago, but, was able to watch the Cubs on WGN every day too in the summers and stuff. And I went to University of Iowa after college, moved to Chicago, spent about 4 years there before I ended up back in Evanston. And I don't know, nowadays my relationship to the city is going and getting some good food or going to see some concerts.
Well, I wanted to ask you, as a follow-up to that, what is something you might consider special? What makes Chicago unique? What's something you could get or find there that you can't get anywhere else in the country other than my favorite type of hot dog?
Lake Michigan. You're not getting that anywhere else. Freshwater lake bordering the 3rd largest city in the country. You're on the beaches and you can just look around the city. It's so unique. I would say that is what's really special. And I mean, the problem with that is it's great for about 3 months.
Right. When the lake unfreezes, when it defrosts, all of a sudden there's a beautiful, beautiful beachfront. And then it gets cold around when? October?
Yeah, I guess I was swimming late September last year. I think I went paddle boarding in early October. That was pushing it.
Right.
It's warmer later and later in the year.
Zooming in on our venue today, the United Center, which we said earlier, Phish is playing 3 nights this summer. It's a pretty new venue for Phish. It's not new in terms of construction, but Phish has only played there once before, 3 nights in October of 2023. Did you go to those shows?
I made it to the 2 out of 3 of those.
All right. What'd you think?
I love seeing Phish in Chicago. I love seeing my bands in Chicago. It was good. I mean, I've seen a lot of events at the United Center. Fun show. Fun show. Yeah, for sure.
So just a little background. You were talking about how you grew up going to a lot of events, as you just said, and sporting events. The United Center, for context, it's where the Chicago Bulls play. It's where the Blackhawks play. It's the inheritor, in my understanding, to the Chicago Stadium. And it opened in 1994 as you mentioned earlier, during the peak years of the Bulls. I refrained then, but I can't now, saying growing up as a Knicks fan, I am both jealous and infuriated to talk about the Bulls' peak years.
I mean, those were always fun matchups, especially when you're on the winning end of that. I can definitely see Patrick Ewing getting dunked on. So
Oh, I got nothing against the Blackhawks, though. Nothing but
Patrick,
love. So it's, as I found, that it's called the United Center is, tell me if I sound like a total tourist out of town idiot, that it's referred to as the house that Jordan built or commonly the UC. Which one should I talk about if I want to sound like I know what I'm talking about?
the UC, yeah, for
Okay.
sure. Yeah, I don't ever say the house that Jordan built.
Yeah, it's a little ungainly. It's a little bit much.
A little long.
Yeah. So the first thing I noticed, and I remember back in 2023 when the band announced these 3 nights, and those 3 nights, was the size of this arena for concerts, according to Wikipedia and its own venue, its own website. Its capacity is 23,500,
Yes.
right, including the floor. So I can't think of an indoor venue that Phish plays on the regular that even comes close to that. The closest I could think of, MSG is approximately 19,500, and that's still a 4,000 person difference. Can you
Yeah.
think of any venues that Phish plays, indoor venues, that's as big as the United Center?
There aren't any. We went through, my buddies and I went through this exercise when we found out they were going to be playing there. We're like, it's got to be the largest because I mean, I know it's the biggest venue for the NBA, at least in the States. Yeah, no, it's the largest indoor venue they've played.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. And to your point, it's the second biggest venue for the NHL. I checked. You're right that in the States, but do you have any idea which team has the largest in the NHL? Which team has the largest indoor venue?
The Bell Center, Montreal.
That's right. That's right. And it makes sense that it would be in Canada.
Yes, it would for hockey.
So yeah, so there have to be, I have to imagine the first thing that comes to mind in an arena that big, because I've never been inside, is that there have to be some spots in the United Center that make for either bad sight lines or sound. But I mean, on the other hand, everybody gets in, right? It's got to be impossible to get shut out if you try hard enough. But in your experience, how does it sound inside? How does it look inside?
I mean, it feels like, a regular Coliseum, but like on steroids. It's just big. Everything's bigger. I don't the For those shows, I ended up picking some seats that were kind of behind the stage rather than way off, like up in the 300s. I picked some obstructed views or for those, and I really enjoyed that. The sound back there was incredible. There's plenty of speakers. It's a little different. I go to a lot of sport. I've been to a lot of sporting events there, and I think it's the noise level is a little bit much for that. But for, a concert, it's pretty spectacular. And as far as sightlines, I think it's just one of those places where you know what you're getting when you
Mhm.
sit down. Wherever you are, you're going to get that a shot to the stage. There just might be a few banners that are hanging in the rafters that might get in your way.
You got to bring it up, don't you?
I've got a little tally mark. I'm going to try and work it in a few times.
Is it hard to get around or to find your place? Like if you were in the 100s and I were in the 300s and we were texting, say, hey, it's set break, let's meet up. Is it going to take the entire set break for us to find each other and then go back to our seats?
I mean, depending on where you're at, yeah, there's a pretty long walk. I mean, just because it is just your regular domed venue, but then there's all that extra distance between everything just because it's so big. So I don't know if you're going to be able to. I would suggest meeting up pre-show, post-show.
Good advice. Well, we'll get to that in a little bit about what there is around in the area, because Chicago is obviously a huge city. But you brought up the sound a little bit earlier, that sitting behind the stage, in this case, was the move for you. Because I read that the sound, the crowd noise, like the din of the background, was part of the architecture. And I don't know if this is true,
Yeah.
but I read that, quote, the United Center's acoustics were designed to amplify the noise in order to replicate, and this is in quotes, the roar which is the din that made the Chicago Stadium famous, especially during hockey games. So the designers of the United Center estimated that the sound would be 80% as loud as the Chicago Stadium had been. So to amplify the noise, they placed angled steel panels around the top level in order to reflect noise back into the bowl of the arena. Now, I'm guessing we're roughly the same age. Do you have memories of the Chicago Stadium? Was it as loud as that quote suggests?
My dad took me to one game so I could see the Chicago Stadium and see Jordan play in it, and it was loud.
Yeah.
I and even in the United Center now it gets really loud. I don't know what they're cheering about because
Yeah.
the teams suck nowadays, but it gets loud. Yeah, no, in the Chicago Stadium definitely had that reputation, the roar. Yeah, I remember that being a thing back in the day.
Although in 2019, a new scoreboard and a quote customized sound system, says the United Center website, was installed to make the sound more balanced and just overall better. Those are my words, overall better, especially in the 300 level. Do you have any source of comparison or any basis of comparison is this sound system overblown or this new scoreboard overblown?
About 20 years ago, I was like an 11 game season ticket holder for the Bulls. And it was in the 300s in a corner. It was very quiet. It wasn't as loud, as it would be in other areas of the venue. And then being up there since, they made a real effort to make the acoustics way louder up there.
All right,
Um,
good.
yeah, and all the people that I know that sat in the 300s the last time weren't complaining.
All right, good. Well, speaking of the last time that they played there in 2023, do you have any tips or tricks for any first timers, people coming to Chicago, or at least to the United Center for the first time?
As far as I would say, you want to eat before you arrive because I don't think the food's that great. It's a big city, so be prepared for $20 beers if that's what you choose to do. Hopefully most people know this, but I would say like don't jump in the first line you see.
Right.
There the lines closer to the city on the eastern side of the building are usually a little longer, and the ones away from the city are a little bit shorter. Some of my friends might be annoyed that I said that. Yeah, I would say those things. I mean, it's Chicago. People are really friendly. So if you're confused, ask for help. They're generally going to be helpful. And then, I mean, if you're going to drive there, they definitely have a lot of lots around the venue, but also if you're a little crafty, you can find free parking on the street around it. So like there's a street called Washington Street, not too far away, and you can find some street parking that's free. So rather than paying $45.
Good tip.
Yeah.
As a New Yorker, I do appreciate any parking tips. Anything that makes parking easier, I am in favor of it.
Yeah.
What is the area around the arena like? Like, what part of Chicago is it in?
It's west of the downtown area, so it's like west of the West Loop area. The area's changed a lot. Like when I went to go see the Bulls at Chicago Stadium, there were still a lot of projects in the area. So this very famous Cabrini Green Towers, when they started developing the United Center, were knocked down, and so it was kind of a rougher area, but it's changed quite a bit. There's a highway that borders it to the south, so there's nothing going on to the south, but west, north, it's like very much Chicago neighborhoods. And then, as you go east away from the venue, there's this the West Loop area, and there's like all around there's some newer developments. And as you go east towards in the city, there's restaurants and bars and stuff like that. Not as many as you'll find downtown, but I think it used to, I don't really know if I'm not a historian in Chicago, but it like kind of used to be more of like a lighter industrial area. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but like now it's like kind of turned into this artsy district with a lot more restaurants and stuff. I would say those are some things. It's a safe walk as you walk east into the city and north out of the venue. Yeah, I don't know. I often, as far as like getting down there, I often drive myself, especially for sporting events. I've got there's a park about 15 minutes away that after, 6 o'clock around it is free parking. And there's this restaurant there restaurant bar that I'll go to beforehand.
Plug it. What are some good places to get a bite?
That place is called Kaiser Tiger. I've been probably going there for like 10 or 15 years. I used to go there because I used to love like IPAs. So they had all these incredible local IPAs, and they still do. But I mean, they've kind of expanded, and they have a bunch of really good. It's really good food. I'll go there. So I don't know. I mean, smack dab in the middle of this city area, there's like this residential area. There's right near a highway. There's just an enormous venue. That's
Right.
kind of like how it is. You'll see when you walk out and you look at the city. You see the skyline. The skyline is far away. Not far away, but decent amount away.
To weave a prediction, a Phish prediction into it, you have a crystal ball. What do you think ticket sales are going to be like for three shows at such an enormous venue?
I think it's going to be very similar to the fall 23 run.
Which was
Uh,
like what?
I think there were tickets available on Friday and Sunday, maybe sold out Saturday, light sell out. But yeah, they ended up opening all the sections behind the stage. Each night they kept adding more sections. They open them up like a section at a time or whatever. So I guess everything in the 200s was open. And so like, was it a sellout? I don't know. I mean, it's the tickets that were available, right?
Right, right.
Behind us in the 300s, behind the stage, there were nobody in those sections and people were getting kicked out. But the 200s, there were people there. But then on Saturday night, when I went the second night, there was a couple more sections open. I don't know how many people ended up going to those shows. I think it was like 19,000, 20,000, maybe.
That's
A
still
lot.
enormous. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen some big Phish shows, but not indoors like that, obviously. I just think it'll be similar to Fall 23. It's interesting that they're doing this in the summer.
I've had that thought, and that's come up in a couple of conversations I've had for this series that the band is playing. You mean an indoor venue, right? Like three
An indoor
shows,
venue,
as
yeah.
opposed to like Northerly Island or something like that, right?
Yes.
Right.
Or at
And
Pine Valley, which
right.
is an hour and 20 minutes away.
And yeah, so I've had this conversation a few times, and Northerly Island actually came up in this conversation that I think the band is just sick of rainouts. I
Yeah,
think
I
they're
think
just
so
sick
too.
of unpredictable weather. Northerly Island being a prime example. What was it, 2014, I think?
Yeah, I was there for that. Just a
It,
monsoon dropped on the venue.
and not pleasant for anybody.
No.
I
Yeah.
wonder if their event insurance has gone through the roof because of having to reschedule or had to, the next night they have to play one long set because they had to cut a show short with the first set the night before. Because it's happened a lot in the past 10 or 12 years. If you're going to do a summer tour across the Midwest and the East Coast, why not take the one variable out of it that's completely uncontrollable, the weather?
Yeah, yeah. And it should be easier just considering the sporting cycles as far as when the Bulls are playing, the Blackhawks are playing, the stadium's available.
Hi, everybody. Brian here to welcome you to the set break of today's episode of Attendance Bias. First, thank you for listening. And second, just a quick reminder to tell you that even though Attendance Bias comes to you for free, it does take a lot of work and it does take quite a bit of money to keep the lights on here at production. So I just wanted to ask a small favor if you could support the podcast in any number of the following ways. If you could leave a review or a rating of it on whichever podcast app you use. If you could spread the word, telling a friend or someone you think may be interested in it about it. Or probably the most concrete way is to go to www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donate however much you can financially to help with the continuing costs of attendance bias. So thank you again so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the second half of today's episode. Even though Phish's first shows at the United Center were in 2023, Phish in Chicago have a long history, and I didn't know this until I started doing some research for our conversation. Phish visited or played in Chicago earlier than even Philadelphia, some other cities on this tour that I consider like strongholds.
Right.
Their first Chicago gig was at a small bar called Lounge Axe, and it's spelled AX as in the tool, but obviously it's a play on words as in Lounge Act, ACT. And that
Yeah.
was on March 30th, 1991. It was their first gig ever in Illinois, so they skipped Evanston completely.
I thought they had played. When did they play the Cubby Bear? They played the Cubby Bear in 1990, which is in right kitty corner from Wrigley Field.
Yeah, the Cubby Bear is a wonderful bar. I love it. Phish played the Cubby Bear on October 2nd, 1991.
Okay.
So it was the same year as their gig at Lounge Acts. It was just 5 months later.
Right. All right.
Close.
Okay.
So, but this gig at Lounge Acts was their first ever in Illinois. It was in Chicago. And this venue was located in the Lincoln Park area. It closed, I would say recently, but it was in 2000. To me, that's still recent. And anyone who likes the movie High Fidelity with John Cusack, as I imagine a lot of Phish fans do, that's the club where he and his coworkers go and they see the girl who ends up becoming kind of his sort of girlfriend, Marie DeSalle, Lisa Bonet's character. There's no known set list for that first Phish show, other than that it was a one set opening slot for a band called Bop Harvey. Have you ever heard of Bop Harvey? Are they Chicago favorites?
I cannot say I've ever heard of Bob Harvey.
I didn't think so. But obviously, Phish has played Chicago dozens of times since, including notable venues. And stop me if you have any stories for any of them, such as the Vic Theater, the Aragon Ballroom. Cubby Bear, as you mentioned, Wrigley, Northerly Island, and some of the best shows in their history and of the 90s, I would suggest, were at the UIC Pavilion.
I know you often start your regular segments with, what was your first show? My first show was in Champaign in 95. I didn't even realize bands toured the way that they toured. So I should have gotten on my horse and gone up to, the UIC Pavilion for 95 Halloween, because that's probably the most epic thing
Is that the
ever.
Rosemont Horizon? Is that the same thing? Because Halloween '95 was Rosemont
Oh,
Horizon,
oh, Rosemont. Yes,
right?
yes. No,
UIC,
they're
there was an
not.
amazing
There's
show in '94.
And then they had this really great run in 98 where like, I think it was 4 nights or something. And I had gone to Madison the night before. There's this incredible split from that show. And I just had a girlfriend at the time, and I was like, I'm gonna go to my girlfriend's. I hadn't gotten to the point where I was like, I'm gonna go to every show I can possibly go to. That happened when I graduated college in 99, and I went on summer tour basically. All those shows in, the 2000s are in all the 2010s. Those were all shows that I was at. And I mean, I don't know. Like there's a tweezer from the Allstate in 2003. That's incredible. The wedge from 2014, that when we were talking about the rain, that wedge I'll still listen to. I find that just to be incredible. There's a No Man's from like 2018 that's pretty fabulous. 2017, a Simple. I mean, there's just like I'm into the jams.
Yeah, me too. And what's
So
funny about that is in the 3.0/4.0 era, Phish has become, because of Live Phish and the Sirius XM radio channel and Phish.in/re-listen, they become so accessible. And I hesitate to use the word disposable, but I will use it, that you could just grab anything at any time. That these jams that have certain names to delineate where and when they were played, the Northerly Wedge and the Northerly Simple are two that stick out to me. Like I know
yeah,
those jams just
yeah,
based on where and when they were played, that they get titles because of that.
yeah. I love that. Those jams just stand out in my mind. I can like picture myself in the venue, turning to my buddy, just kind of shaking our heads, like, what? In between dancing, and just smacking each other. Ah! So I don't know. I mean, those as far as songs stick out for me. I went looking at my stats, to kind of when we talked about doing this. So in the Chicago metro area, I've seen them 25 times, which is
Jeez.
pretty good number. It's so nice to be in your hometown and be able to sleep in your own bed. You got friends coming back in town to see it. Everything's comfortable, like all that stuff just makes it all so much more pleasant. But you were saying earlier, there's that one just like from show experiences that rain out at Northern Island stands out. I don't know. I'd never seen, I mean, I had like only a few times in my life seen a wall of water like that coming. And everyone's just, the band's like, we have to get off. And people are all looking at each other like, is he serious? What? Do we really have to go? It's fine. Just keep playing. And then the wall of water comes. And what is an interesting story from that? It was Pearl Jam was playing that same night at Wrigley Field. And they ended up playing until like 2:30 in the morning. They started back up after the storm went through. And we dropped a buddy off on the way back up to Evanston or that night, and he ended up just walking into Wrigley with no ticket and saw this 2 hours of Pearl Jam that night. Those are my highlights from Chicago. Lots of things I wish I'd been tuned in for, a little bit earlier.
Well, don't we all?
Yeah, I know, right?
I'm not an expert on that October 2023 run at the United Center, but it also seems like it had its share of highlights. I don't know if I've even listened to those shows, but just looking at the Phish.net notes, so the band walked on stage is pretty funny to the Friday the 13th theme because the first night was Friday the 13th, which was my birthday also. I'm surprised I wasn't there. But there was also Albuquerque they played. It was a big bust out. They played Talk. There were teases of A Love Supreme, Corina, Way, Spanish Moon. Sissy Strut was being teased on the last night. And even if I understand this correct, a Tweezer coda where the band picked up this song on Sunday from where they left off Tweezer on Friday. So they skipped Tweezer entirely on Saturday and made a true Tweezer sandwich from the first night to the last night.
I do recall just all the uniqueness and rarity that was involved with some of their song selections. I would say if you like the jams, there's this slow grinding industrial like crazy jam that literally melted me. The split and the what's the use into everything's right. Like of the 2 nights that I went, musically that was a highlight.
The Harpua isn't a highlight from 2014.
So that's just like my buddy and I were talking about that. It's just bad.
It is just bad, yeah.
They had the comedy group come out.
Second City, yeah.
We were looking around at each other there. I'm like, come on, just stop.
So let me ask you, assuming that the weather was perfect, right? We're now in God's position. We could control the weather, right? So if Phish announces their summer tour for 2025, do you choose Northerly Island with good weather or the United Center?
Oh,
3 nights. 3
Island
nights.
is such a pain to get to. Oh my goodness. It's such a gorgeous venue. That's tough. I mean, I think I would just say United Center. I don't, although see, the North of the Island isn't that great. You can be on the lawn and not see the stage at all. And
It's all flat, right?
Yeah, because there's these like grandstands that block people on the field. And if you're like right in the channel where it's open onto the field, then it's like you could see the stage, but they were putting a lot of people back there. And I mean, some people don't mind, they just want to be there. But if you want to see the band, I would say if I had, could guarantee getting into like the pit area, the general pit area at Northern Island, I would want Northern Island. Yeah. 83 degrees, beautiful Chicago summer nights. Yeah, that's what I think I'd have to say Northerly.
And what was your reaction when Phish announced this tour in February and you saw 3 nights in Chicago?
My mind immediately went to the weather. And I was like, yeah, of course. I mean, everything just keeps getting delayed and, they've had such bad experiences with weather. So it made sense to me.
Well, to wrap this all up, Brendan, you gave one specific recommendation for the listeners for where they go. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but I would ask
Yeah.
you again, any specific restaurants, regional food, even if it's not a particular restaurant, or drinks that you would recommend to first timers to Chicago or people who have returned and, maybe missed out on some favorites the first time.
You mentioned this earlier, but like hot dogs. People love to associate Chicago with hot dogs. And what you do with your hot dog is your business in my mind. There's like a really fun place to get hot dogs. It's called the Wiener Circle.
Sure, sure.
The people there play this bit where they're angry with you and will yell at you and call you all types of things if you're delaying the order. That's a fun thing to participate in. The restaurant that I mentioned earlier is the Kaiser Tiger, and that's just east of the venue. I got a buddy who lives like pretty much from his front steps, he looks at the United Center. So I asked him for a little bit of some help there because I'm a type of person where if I find something I like, I'll keep going back.
Right, right.
So he said across the street from the Kaiser Tiger, there's this Japanese barbecue place, GYUKAKU. I don't want to butcher it because I know I'll say it wrong. There's a bunch of, been seeing a lot of goose shows lately, and we've been looking for like food halls just to appease everybody because you can get drinks there and food. And there's this place called Timeout Marquee that's on Fulton near there. It's a food hall, like I said. There's fancier places like the Loyalist. You need a reservation there. It's supposed to be incredible food. Those are all right near the venue. I would say all within like a 10, 15-minute walk, depending on how fast you can walk. And then outside of that, I mean, Chicago's also known for steakhouses, beyond Googling just the top 5 and rolling the dice, which I would say you're going to have a good meal. I like the Chop House is one of my favorite steakhouses. I have vegan friends and stuff, and I've eaten at a place if you're like more of a vegetarian vegan person. It's not near the venue. On the north side, there's a place called the Chicago Diner, really well liked by people. In like the River North area, there's this place called Twin Anchor, which is incredible for ribs. I mean,
I'm interested. I love ribs.
I haven't been there probably a decade, but it's incredible. So I don't know. I feel like I've been remiss not to mention steakhouses and, a little bit of some rib action and some hot dogs.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Breakfast of champions.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then you got to go to the beach, man. If you're coming to town, you got to go to the beach. You're going to have all day. And I was looking at the schedule. The Cubs play actually on the 18th and the 20th. So they're day games. They play on the 19th as well. But at like 1:20, I'm sure there'll be plenty of, Phish heads out there catching those games. I wonder actually if sometimes, the band gets called in to like do like,
the national anthem,
or throw out the ball. So I imagine one of those days might be something like that. If you're coming from out of town, you need to make your way to the beach and just enjoy it. There's so many great beaches. They just lined with beaches. Have you been to Chicago before?
I have a number of times.
Okay.
Yeah, for various reasons. Like one time my cousin ran the Chicago Marathon and my family made it like a family trip for the weekend.
Okay.
I went to Fare Thee Well. I've also, that was unbelievable. I didn't stay though. I stayed in, I think, Skokie, Illinois. I didn't stay in Chicago. I know.
I live right by Skokie. I'm
Oh,
actually,
yeah?
my address is Evanston, but the people around here call this area Skevinston because
Ah,
it's this weird Skokie Evanston thing.
that's like the house that Jordan built. It's a little bit of it's a little angular there. But yeah, I've been to Chicago and I've loved it every time. My wife and I do baseball road trips. We've seen both the White Sox and the Cubs. Loved it. I thought the White Sox was like going to a backyard barbecue and Wrigley was like going to church.
That's fair.
It was like two different ways of going to see the game.
No doubt. No doubt.
But Brendan, thanks so much for giving us the heads up on Chicago, the history of Phish in Chicago, and sharing your personal experiences seeing the band in Chicago. I mean, I feel like I'm all ready to go. So I appreciate you being available, making yourself available, and giving us and our listeners all the best information.
Well, you're very welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to come on Attendance Bias.
And that is it for today's preview episode of the United Center. I'd like to thank Brendan for joining me today. I'd like to thank all of you for listening to this series. I'd obviously like to thank Phish.net for their help with the extensive facts that I had to dig up in research for this. And of course, Phish.in for all of the different music clips we got to include. And the Mockingbird Foundation always for everything they do to help support music education in schools. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, please support the show. You can do this by following us on social media, and you can also visit www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donating anything you can. I'd appreciate it so much to keep the lights running here at production. Thank you again so much for listening, and we'll see you next week when we discuss my local hometown venue and probably the most controversial one of the summer tour, Forest Hills Stadium in Forest Hills, New York. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time on Attendance Bias.